Hi, welcome to British English Hub. I'm Paul. Today I'm going to speak about two factors: sentence construction and the use of linking words. Now, in my experience as a teacher, I have seen many students who just write these incredibly long sentences. And you're thinking, my God, what is going on here? It lacks any cohesion. It lacks punctuation. It lacks meaning. So basically, you're thinking now, how can I break this sentence down to make things easy? The English language is as easy as you make it. You don't have to complicate it. So in today's video, I'm going to teach you how to use linkers to make your sentences simple and shorter, and more importantly, more coherent. I'm going to be exploring what we call the contrasting unexpected clause, and I'll explain exactly what I mean by that. So we use what we call compound sentences. A compound sentence is a sentence with two clauses separated normally, not always, normally by a linking word. And there are different categories of linking words. There are cause and effect linking words. There are effect and clause when you invert. So the first clause is the cause, the second is the effect, or vice versa. The first clause is the effect, the second clause is the cause. Using words like therefore, because of, owing to, due to, these types of words. Now, there are also linkers which add information. We talk about and type linking words. For example, and, moreover, in addition, those types of words, furthermore as well. Also, there are what we call a clause with an unexpected piece of information, kind of contrasting but more unexpected, and that's what we're going to be talking about today, the but linker. And there are variations of the but linker, and I'm going to show you exactly what is meant by that. Let's start off with unexpected contrast, exactly what it is. The study produced inconclusive results. Now, you look at that sentence, it's a little bit kind of, a little bit negative. Then you've got the verses, which is where I would incorporate the linking word. And then the second clause, the researchers continue their investigation, meaning that's something good. So you've got a slightly negative clause, and then you've got a more positive clause, and that's what I mean by unexpected information. The but, we always use but, we're familiar with but. Now, there are other ways we can structure our sentences with that particular linker, and I will show you exactly what I mean. Okay, so here we go. Firstly, what if we could only use but in a sentence for unexpected info? What do you think if we just use but in our sentences the whole way through? Think about it. Think about the style. Think about the rhythm, the flow. These are factors you've got to take into consideration. So let's look at the but sentence. A study produced inconclusive results, but the researchers continued their investigations. So you've got the negative and then you've got the positive. Okay, and but is a perfectly feasible connector to use. So you've got two clauses in this compound sentence, the first clause and the second clause, separated by but, the linking word. Okay, now think about the English language generally. We can use different linking words, but if we use different linking words, we have to rearrange the sentence. So this is where style comes into play. Okay, we can replace but with although. Now, you have to put although at the beginning of a sentence so that the linker begins, your first clause follows up, and then there's a comma with, and please, if you're going to use all that, it must have two clauses. So the comma has got to go in, and then that follows with the second clause, unexpected piece of information. And again, using but and although, you alternate, and that kind of lends itself to the style, the overall style of the writing. Now we go on to however. Now, however, is a little bit punchier. It's a little bit of a kind of like, this is the unexpected piece of information, rather than having a soft but. It's a book more impacting. And notice there is a semicolon before and a comma afterwards. So the study produced inconclusive results, semicolon. However, the researchers continued their investigation. Again, rather than having but, you have a kind of a more of a kind of impacting linker that really sort of brings your attention to the fact that the next piece of information or the next clause is going to be unexpected. So that's the key. Now we have our despite, and despite's always a nice one. Despite the inconclusive results of the study, the researchers continued their investigation. So again, it's kind of similar to although, but one thing about despite is it normally follows with what we call a noun clause. Normally, a noun clause is a clause without a verb, or if there is a verb, it's normally a gerund, which is a verb plus ing, which, now I'm going to really confuse you, is technically a noun. Mad. Anyway, so we've got despite. So we've seen but, we've seen although, we've seen however, and now we have despite, and they're all synonymous. Every one of them is synonymous. And then we have our fifth one, which is nevertheless. Again, kind of an impacting linker, and it goes sort of after a semicolon, and then you have to put in a comma before you actually start the second clause. So, study produced inconclusive results. Nevertheless, the researchers continued their investigation. Simple compound sentence with nevertheless functioning as like but or although. One thing that differentiates but with nevertheless is that nevertheless is used in more academic styled writing. So but is more informal and nevertheless is more formalized or academic register. Now, finally, we move on to yet. Again, yet is absolutely synonymous to but it's used in, again, like nevertheless, in more academic register. So, study produced inconclusive results, yet the researchers continued their investigation. Again, it's slightly sharper and slightly more impacted than but. It's kind of like, drawing the reader's attention to the fact that the next clause is going to consist of unexpected information, basically. And I like using yet. I think it's a very effective linker. So, moving on to a sentence. Now, this is something I want to explain very, very carefully. Down below me is a paragraph with the repetitive use of but. And let's see how it reads. That's correct grammatically, but there's something not quite right with the rhythm and the style. So artificial intelligence is becoming increasingly common in education, but many teachers remain cautious about its use. AI tools can save time when preparing lessons, but some educators worry that students may become too dependent on them. Schools are investing in new technologies, but training for staff is often limited. The potential benefits are significant, but many questions about long-term effects remain unanswered. Now, when I read that out, did you notice how repetitive it sounded? How almost like stayed, if you like. it kind of lacked a certain rhythm because of that repetitive use of but. It doesn't demonstrate that you have a particularly wide range of vocabulary and you're not stylistically inclined. If I can move on to the next part, which is where I replace but with other linkers. Here we go. Now, those buts have now replaced by different linkers, and they're all different. It shows that I have flexibility of writing. So, although artificial intelligence become increasingly common in education, many teachers remain cautious about its use. So we use although for the first one, then we use however. All AI tools can save time when preparing lessons. However, some educators worry that students may become too dependent on them. Then we move on to despite. Despite investment in new technologies by schools, training for staff is often limited. And last but not least, the potential benefits are significant. Nevertheless, many questions about long-term effects remain unanswered. Now, how does that compare to the previous text? You tell me. Is it better? Is it more effective? Is it more impacting? Is it richer in vocabulary? Is it more stylistic? You tell me. So, as I've stated here, using a wider range of linkers creates a more sophisticated and academic style. Writing is simplistic and you can write very, very effectively with short compound sentences with an array of different linkers. Anyway, that's my session for today. Thank you so much for watching. If you're interested, I have another video on constructing sentences, which looks at different aspects of constructing a simple sentence using a range of techniques. I recommend you watch that. It's really, really good and explains everything very simplistically. So, thank you very much for watching. Stay tuned. Please add a like. Please subscribe. Until next time, take care. Bye bye.